We're from Equifax. My name is Brandon Holcomb. I run our platform engineering team for Infrastructure Group.
Andy Cooper, I run infrastructure for Equifax, and my credit score is 764.
Huh?
My Equifax credit score.
That's right. There you go.
Now, that's great because I have only been in the country 3 years. You can tell by my accent, I'm not from Alabama.
Right.
So I'm like a 21-year-old in terms of credit history. So
he hasn't had time to not pay his bills. But mine's $7.99, just so you know.
I'll catch you up. I'll catch you up.
Okay. All right. So a little bit about us, a little bit about Equifax. A lot of people don't know this. We are 117 years old, founded by a couple of brothers out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. They created the retail credit company in 1899. I always say that Cater and Guy were our first assembler programmers, but they're a little bit before that time. Cater was a grocer who decided that a lot of people weren't paying their bills, and he started writing down their names and information about them and selling it to other vendors. That's how it all came about. So you'll see a little bit about our company history. So the early days was just a regional credit bureau, and it quickly evolved into a little bit larger than where we were. Our first outside of Atlanta is where we settled, but the first place they went was Toronto, Canada. So that was kind of interesting that we were an international company from the very beginning. Then over the next 60 years, we start to have some consolidation. 60, 70 years, you get to consolidation. The Fair Credit Reporting Act, FCRA, comes into an existence in the early 70s, and the company is rebranded in the mid 70s as Equifax, and what we know today as what we are. And then you have years of acquisition and growth. All the regional bureaus start to get bought up. You get the three that exist today, TransUnion, ourselves, and Experian. And we have a lot of differentiated assets that came about through growth and through our area. So we actually have expanded way beyond the credit world. I think Andy will talk to that a little bit from there. And then where are we going in the future? We've really become much more focused on the delivery of assets and where we are today. So we are in 24 countries around the world and over 40 data centers that we manage and run internally. So it's quite a story. So I'll let Andy kind of take it from here for a little bit, and then we'll be back in a second.
So as we say, we're so much more than a traditional credit reference agency now. You know, we're a big data, we're an analytics, and we're a software as a service company. So all of these new technologies that we're blending to create business solutions for our customers and for consumers. So by the numbers, as Brandon said, 1899 we were founded. We're now 2.7 billion revenue a year, 9,200 employees, of which around 2,000 are Equifax IT employees, and we're in 24 countries. In terms of the data assets, and our strategy is to differentiate ourselves with data assets and expand the data that we hold on consumers, businesses, and also employer contributions. So we've got a huge amount of data that we manage out there. And to do that, we use some pretty innovative technologies and approaches, and we've had some good awards in the last few years that you can see there. So where have we come from, and what's the transformation, and why are we up here? Around 2003, we signed a very long-term outsourcing agreement, and that was good. We had mainframes, we were very mainframe-centric, but around 2007, we started to get very high mid-range and web scale. That necessitated that we make cost savings relative to that outsourcing agreement, and so we repatriated a lot of the services and built competence around technical domains. So, you know, we created things like large SANs, multi-tenant, first generation virtualization shared compute platforms. And what we found was, when we brought on these technical domain capabilities, people with those skills, naturally, we delivered platforms that were aligned to the way we were structured. So as you can see, around 2009, 2010, we built those technical domain capabilities, and that produced shared infrastructure platforms. Again, very, very domain-centric. We then moved around 2011, 2012 to start to deploy private clouds and more converged technologies. Again, in order to make that successful, we needed to move to converged teams. Most recently, we've become platform-centric and looking to deploy software-defined data centers. And again, the key thing is establish the organization capability, the engineering capability, and you're very successful then in the platform that you deliver. So as well as being operationally led to strategically led, you know, back in 2007, 2008, it was all about cost savings and unit cost. Now it's all about business agility and how we add value to the business units we service. So when we talk about this agile data center infrastructure and software-defined data center, what enabled that change? We say that last year the planets aligned. External factors, you know, we haven't invested in a Equifax data center since 2008 in terms of a major expansion. And last year we realized that, you know, the co-location market now is very mature. And why build your own data center in the new economy? So first thing was, you know, that idea of buying and leasing specialized real estate as a data center. Secondly, the whole advent of cloud computing and cloud everything. Thirdly, again, when we last invested in data centers, network bandwidth was a premium. You know, I don't think you could buy a gigabit WAN link or MPLS link in 2008, 2009, but now we can buy huge connectivity domestically within the US to interconnect data centers. And finally, the whole idea of, you know, software-defined data center and infrastructure as code. Those were sort of like the things that were happening in the industry which we became aware of when we were looking at where we go next. Within our specific environments, those high-scale platforms that I talked about in the previous slide were reaching their useful end of life, and we had to reinvest. That depreciation was coming off the books, so we had the opportunity to move to next-generation technology. Brandon will talk in a minute about, and it goes back to that skills transition, how we've evolved engineering competence over the last few years. We had those skills, and we wanted to invest more in the automation and coding side of things. And then finally, you know, some of these co-located facilities are right in the heart of the US network. So the bandwidth and the access we can get for a data services and Decision 360 strategy to our customers and also to the internet was far superior to anything we could do in our own legacy data centers. So that's sort of like the technology piece, but the bigger challenge is always organization and culture.
Right. So thanks, Andy. So rarely is culture change linear, right? There are factors that play into this across the board. So it is kind of like the vision here is to put a puzzle together, right? If you got to put all these pieces together to kind of make it happen, and this is kind of how it worked for us. The first thing at the top there that we always say that how we work is just as important as what we build. The way you scale, the way you interact. I think I forgot the gentleman that spoke this morning who told the story around Paulie, around the whole, and from Hearst, is around this whole idea of coming together and making shared goals and ability to deliver on those goals. We had to change the way we work. We were not incented the right way. We weren't structured the right way. We had to get people into the place of saying, okay, if we're going to grow and scale and attract talent and do the right things and grow people and develop them, as Damon talked about yesterday, we have to put in place some incentive. And a lot of that goes up, right? This idea of how versus what. Features are always going to win the day. You've got to get to a place that now, okay, how we work is important. So the whole agile maturity on the development side had to seep over into the infrastructure world. And that's where we're mainly focused in infrastructure. So how did we do that? Andy talked about the 2003 when we went to this very, very large, it was in vogue back then to have a very, very large outsourcing deal, multi-year outsourcing deal. What we found though is when we brought all this new stuff back in, the second piece of the puzzle was that we still had this culture that came with it, right? People still wanted contractual means in order to interact. You had to, I'm not going to do that until you open this ticket. Those types of things. We had to kind of kill off that culture. And sometimes it went too far away, you know, where, oh, we should just do whatever. you have to have some control. But you have to kill this idea that it's always a contractual agreement to do business with one another. So you had to start to develop and trust, the trust and empathy aspects of things. The next one is obvious that everyone struggles with and everyone needs is you need talent. You need talent, and they're in your organization that you need to cultivate. But when you've been outsourced for multiple years, sometimes it's rebadging, and sometimes it's tilling the soil and getting out and doing the work, because you got to go find it. And fortunately, we got a row of people here that some of them were brought in and some of them were brought up through our organization. And so we went after it that way. And one way we attract talent is we decided we were going to become builders, not buyers, right? We have a ton of technology partners that we buy their stuff, but we're not looking to them to innovate and drive our direction. We're looking at them to partner alongside of us and help us get there. We've got one of our major storage vendors in the room today. He came out here to this, and this is great. We have a ton of partnerships that we do, and we'll talk some more to that around tools in a few minutes. But then we talk about something like quality at the source. This is all about ownership. Each one of your teams really, really has to understand that they're responsible for quality, right? And I'm from Alabama, so you got to put up with that for a second. But my mom always said stuff tastes a lot better if you season it all along the way, right? If you try to dump a bunch of salt in the end, it never tastes good. So this whole idea that there's quality at the source of everything that you do, and you should build quality in all along. Therefore, you got a lot less burden. And the biggest thing that we've found, or one of the things that have kind of propelled us, so all these things are kind of setting up to this idea of now you've got to go to this product versus business case view. That fortunately we have an understanding, C-level executives who get it and understand that now we need to be investing beyond the business case. If you're bringing a business case in and it's going to have a specific solution, there's no way you're ever going to get ahead of the demand supply thing that Domenica just talked about. You've got to start to build toward product. And so we knew that at the infrastructure level. So we have now said, okay, here's the finite amount of product that we're going to deliver. We're going to improve on it. We're going to get really, really good at. Build your apps toward that. It's no secret. That's what Amazon does. That's what Azure does. That's not a secret in this world. But to change your company to go to that model, to have a year-long business case that's aligned to product ownership at the infrastructure level and at the software level is vital to being able to be agile and to be able to have a funding line that goes through. So we've talked about the infrastructure and the organization, but I'm going to let Andy kind of talk about what is always the most important thing, the money. Follow the money, right? That's what Andy always tells me. So he's going to tell you a little bit about how we were successful in centralizing the budget and how that impacted how we could drive this strategy forward and how that's now taking us to another level.
So I think the place to start on this slide is actually the right-hand box, which says common platforms. We took a hard, long look at all our business units globally. And we actually found out that we actually do the same thing in every business we operate in. We have some sort of core data exchange. We have some process to ingest and verify data. We have channels such as software as a service and to present solutions back to customers, big data. So what we said was, if we can define a finite number of these core platforms aligned to business workloads and our business capabilities and say, this is the target whenever we invest, you may be able to design a widget which is potentially a little bit more performant, but the cost of sprawl and the cost of not keeping to standard building blocks is too great for the enterprise. See, previously on the right-hand side, we'd actually been operating in a very siloed manner. So probably you guys are familiar with this. The application teams would come with an application design and we'd create an infrastructure design optimized to that application. And, depending on which technology was in vogue at the time and preferences around what programming language or, what infrastructure stack, you'd get all of these snowflakes, and we'd have this huge construction zone of project managers and infrastructure people and developers all just trying to make all of these Lego blocks fit together, square pegs, round holes, really bad and really inefficient from a time and a cost perspective. So the real other point of the common platforms is we actually have a sister organization now, or a brother organization, Core Software Engineering. And the idea is that the core software engineering software assets, plus our infrastructure platforms, we go to market globally within Equifax with that as our strategic investment proposition. So if you think, and again, if you go back to where we came from, 2010, 2011, we proved the economic value of high-scale shared platforms. Again, public cloud does it very well. We've now gone to the next level where we've aligned those platforms and those new capabilities to the actual software assets that we need to deploy to drive revenue. People in Equifax now get that if you can get scale, you're going to get more engineering, you're going to get better resilience and performance for everybody. And finally, the whole idea that you're leveraging both the software and the infrastructure assets at the enterprise level. So the funding now isn't targeted. The business units can't spend money on specific applications and specific infrastructure. The business units have to come to the right-hand side and decide which software asset they need, and hence which hardware platform they need to deploy that business capability. And you know, as Brandon said, our C-levels have been hugely supportive of this strategy as being the absolute optimum way to invest in a global business and become an enterprise.
And to that point, it's the CIO and the CFO are the ones that are now driving that through financial means.
It's a very strong partnership.
A strong partnership, and but all the vision and strategy came from below. It came from technology. It came from the technology group to go in that, and the CIO being the biggest sponsor of that, obviously. So it's been a great success. So once you get past that, you know, you'll realize that budget, we have to align in order to deliver on these things, right, across our teams, across everywhere. But once you drive budget alignment, it's going to drive execution alignment. And if you don't have both of those, you're going to get a bad result pretty quick. I'll call it a dumpster fire. It's what you're going to get. So you know, that's the first thing is you've got to understand that you're going to have to work across these things. If you start to get to shared services, those shared services need to be performant, but also be consumable and need to be enterprise ready. So we have a couple of ways of doing that. I have a saying that says, use tools to do your job, not be your job. You should be able to use tools and find tools that help you do your job. My lead of systems here, Jim Grill's here, he always says use small, sharp tools to do the job well that you want to do. Sometimes use a shovel, sometimes use a spade, right? It's how it works. And we use a lot of these. So a way we do some alignment around that, you know, we had Damon and Alex come in from Simplify Ops to help us a little bit around value stream mapping. So that's a tool that we use. We also use tools like Chef, Rundeck, Lean Kit. We actually use Hygia, that Cap One, so gracefully put out into the market for everyone to take. So that is important. So another thing is sharing, right? This whole idea of sharing that we develop and fund communities of practice. You know, Ross Clanton was nice enough to get on the phone with us and just explain how they do their dojos up at Target. So we've been inspired by them. So we thank them for that. But we have these communities of practice. We have community practices around CD. We have a community of practice around the way we do release management. We have one around Agile as well in the company. And these are not organizationally owned. These are cross-organizational teams that come together to establish best practices, determine what's needed, and they go out and use those products to do that. And then the big thing is to narrow focus. Back to just kind of like the platforms, having common platforms, it narrows the choice. When you narrow choice, you can build competency. If you go wide, go sprawled, you're trying to chase every rabbit, you're not going to grow any competency. You're not going to be able to scale. And, you know, I'll put my obligatory Deming quote in here. I don't know if John's in here or not, but If you don't understand how to run an efficient operation, new machinery will just give you new problems in operation and maintenance. The sure way to increase productivity is to better administrate man and machine. These are really the underpinnings of scale. How do we do that? So all this is kind of translated. We have a technology, we have what we call our IT growth playbook. It's a 3 to 5 year plan of where we want to be around all of these common platforms and capabilities. We have a business capability framework that it's aligned to. So, you know, a lot of that, now what did it do? What was the big takeaway from all of this? And that is that IT now has a seat at the table. So our technology has a seat at the table when we go to sales. So recently, in the last year, we have had multiple opportunities, 2 that I've been on, to where we are in RFP discussions with customers, and they want to know about our decisioning solution or our analytics solution. They want to know what we can deliver, obviously, from that perspective, you know. But what's gotten very interesting is companies are becoming so technology aligned that they want our 3 to 5 year roadmap in technology. And what happened in 2 cases now is that the technology team is the one making the decision for the business on the other side of who they go with. And fortunately for us, we've won 2 RFPs in the last year on sales calls that we go in with our sales partners and close the deal. So that is really, it's an exciting time in technology when they care about your data center strategy. I'm just telling you, if you're a data center guy, you don't really know. So a lot of that is happening. And so it's been a great run to this point, but we're nowhere near the finish line. We're just getting started. We kind of, you call it, our project's called Bluebird. Yep. And he calls it the Blueberg, and we're only at the tip of the iceberg. So that's where we are now. So it looks like we have a few minutes left. If you would like to contact us, Andy doesn't do Twitter. I have a Twitter handle. And
because I'm only 21, I've told you.
That's right. He's a 21-year-old low credit score, but we welcome any questions.
I'm sorry. Are there microphones?
Can you talk a bit more about how you cultivate innovation even while you're doing all that centralization on your core platforms?
You want to take it?
You go first.
All right. Yeah, so there's a couple of areas. So a lot of what we do in our business is we have a thing called the business capability framework. We do the same thing everywhere in the world, across all 24 geographies. So what ends up happening is most of the business units, in terms of innovation and how we build it, they are a part of what core software engineering or GPS is doing. So a lot of it is about breaking down the boundary between organizational responsibility, in my view, and how we cultivate innovation. We have a quote dojo. We call it the ICU, Intensive Collaboration Unit. I have a CIA. I have a couple of things that go on over there. But anyway, the way we kind of cultivate that is by bringing everyone into the solutioning. So a lot of what we've done around product alignment is really around delivery of things to customers. So our quarterly plans, for instance, are all aligned to the delivery of a particular customer. And we build product feature sets that go along with that and align with that. So that's one way we do it. We have an R&D group as well. And they go out and look at all things like blockchain and all of this kind of stuff. And they've been given complete freedom to go do that. We do take advantage of some other areas in our groups. Multiple business units do have some R&D work as well. So that's kind of the one way. We kind of have it's actually quite free when you have this, when you get these year-long budget cycles. So you're not looking business case to business case. You're not looking. You get a full line of sight to a year.
Yeah,
worth of funding.
I think the other thing I think is key within Equifax. We've got a huge variation in the scale of our business. So whatever we design in terms of these platforms and applications has to scale with our business units. So that really is that's forced us to engineer things thinking big and thinking small, which I think really helps us. And we do spend a lot, when we decide that the enterprise needs one of these platforms, we do spend a lot of time understanding exactly how it'll operate in a single data center, active, across 2 data centers. So it's a big deal when we say we're going to engineer a platform.
Yeah, we typically build them in scale units. So if you need a big one, you add 5 of them, or whatever that magnum multiplier is. So, one more. Okay.
Oh yeah.
I think we got. Yeah.
Interesting to see that you strategy of infrastructure as code extended to software-defined data center. Can you give us just a brief idea of what the technology challenges were there, and particularly around networking?
It's nascent.
No, I'll let you go on that one.
Okay.
I'll take it.
And you got
if want
about
me to.
30 seconds to
Yeah,
answer.
so we made some, traditionally we did use some of the more traditional network technologies. Network is a domain that we've changed significantly in our new data centers because our mantra is everything has to be programmable, it has to have an API. Yeah. So you don't perhaps see some of the traditional network provider infrastructure in our pattern. But we can talk.
We got a couple of layers.
And our network architect is sat there as well.
Yeah. We got a couple of layers in the network space that we've kind of abstracted. So we said the only requirement is a comprehensive API. If you have a comprehensive API, we'll play ball with you. If you don't, not. But then we have some other stratums we can talk about.
I just want to say, you guys, that was a fantastic presentation, and I want to hear the evolution next year. So everyone, please remember to fill out your surveys for them. Give them a good score so we can hear what happens next year. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.